Hey, good morning everybody. Clint here with CCUA. We got another VEG Out video for you. Today we're going to continue our Scientists of Color series. And our feature today is a woman named Edna Lewis. Edna Lewis is probably most famous for one of her cookbooks that she wrote. She wrote 3, if I remember right, but it was her second one that really gained her a lot of national attention. But a little bit of background. Edna Lewis was born in 1916 in Virginia, in just a small town that was founded by some emancipated slaves, one of them being her grandfather. And she grew up there on a small family farm where she learned how to grow all of her, not all, but learned how to grow her own food, forage for her food, and cook there in the community. It was a very poor rural area, so they didn't have a lot of modern appliances and such like we know about today. And one fun example is they didn't have measuring cups, so anytime that they needed to measure something in that small of amounts like baking soda or powder, she would use coins. So maybe a nickel's worth or a penny's worth or a dime's worth of baking soda. She moved out of that town when she was 16 after her father died. Actually moved to New York City. She got her first job there as a ironer at a laundry store. She did not know how to iron, so she was fired within just a couple hours. But luckily she was able to find a job as a seamstress pretty quick. She was a talented sewer. She actually was able to produce different styled dresses for some pretty famous people at the time, including Marilyn Monroe, which is pretty neat. While she was doing that, she was also throwing dinner parties for some of her friends, really learning more about cooking and more French-styled cooking, especially there in New York. And eventually, after several years, she and a friend of hers opened up their very own restaurant, Cafe Nicholson. And she was the head chef there. It was a French-style restaurant, but with Edna as the head chef, it was more of Southern-style cuisine with French influence. And it was really popular. A lot of famous people at the time would go to eat there. Marlon Brando, Tennessee Williams, Eleanor Roosevelt, Salvador Dali, some pretty big names going to check out her restaurant. And she worked there for 3 years before moving on to explore more stuff. She ran a small pheasant farm for a while. She did vegetable farming for a little bit. Did a lot more cooking and catering, private catering. And then one day in the, maybe the late 60s, early 70s, she was talking with a friend of hers about writing a cookbook. There were, at the time, not really many Southern-style cookbooks that people could use. So she and her friend worked to write this cookbook, which at the time was kind of a big deal because there were not a lot of cookbooks, not a lot of Southern-style cookbooks, not a lot of cookbooks written by women, and certainly not a lot of cookbooks written by black Southern women at the time. So that was kind of a big deal. And it did not do very well. It was not a very well-selling cookbook. Kind of flopped. However, the Julia Child's publisher and editor noticed it and decided she wanted to help Edna make a more popular cookbook. And so she worked with Edna to kind of make another new cookbook, but not just recipes, but also kind of to interweave her own story and style throughout it. Telling her stories about growing up in rural Virginia, about Emancipation Day picnics, and all those little quirks that people that didn't grow up in that environment never knew about. And so with that, I think the name of the cookbook is the Taste of Country Living, A Taste of Southern Living. I think it's A Taste of Southern Living. Became wildly popular and really helped put Southern-style food on the national stage. Not that you couldn't get Southern style food in different places, but this cookbook really kind of took it to the next level. I believe that cookbook came out in 1974 or somewhere right around then. After that, she continued to remain a chef for most of her life until she retired in the 90s, early 90s, and then just enjoyed her retirement, split between New York and the South. She passed away in Georgia, where she lived most of the end of her life, in the close company of a friend she had made, the chef at the governor's mansion in Georgia, Scott Peacock, who I know people always said that it was such a funny friendship because she was this older black woman in her 80s, and he was a very young white guy that was cooking for the governor in Georgia. But they had a really awesome friendship, and they wrote another cookbook together. And she lived out the remainder of her years in Georgia until 2006. But that's just sort of the Cliff Notes version of Edna Lewis's story. There's a lot more that goes on in her life, and there's a lot of books and articles out there about her. I definitely encourage you to look into her story if you're interested in learning some more. Well, we hope you enjoyed this, and we will catch you all next week with some more VEG Out videos. Thanks.